So, Games Workshop has given us a rare treat this morning. 3 rules for a bespoke Intercessor kill team, and they seem pretty good. I wasn't expecting to make this video, but as I prepared my coffee this morning and hopped onto Warhammer Community as any self-respecting nerd does first thing in the day, I was surprised to learn that it seems that Games Workshop will be releasing rules for bespoke teams that are not part of an expansion box for free on the Warhammer Community website going forwards, as opposed to releasing them in White Dwarf. Let's get into it. So just before we begin, if you're new here, welcome. I hope you enjoyed the video and recommend you check out some of our battle reports, as that's our main kind of content. Return viewers, if you're interested in helping us make more of our battle reports and other related content, then please consider supporting us on Patreon. You can get some perks and benefits such as access to our private Discord server, early access to videos, and behind the scenes content, among other bonuses, as a thank you for your support. It's worth mentioning that in addition to this release, Games Workshop are now offering a condensed version of the core rules for free, which should make for a handy cheat sheet during your games. But most veteran players are going to be much more interested about the new Intercession kill team, so here it is. Going through it, you'll see that some stuff has stayed the same, but a lot more has changed. So, starting with the things that have remained largely the same, we can see that the Intercession Squad kill team has the security and seek and destroy archetypes, and that they number 6 operatives strong. For the most part, their weapon options remain the same, which is a bit of a shame as it continues the trend of Space Marines struggling to gain access to truly potent weaponry, but we can already see the first of the many new changes. Assault Intercessors and regular Intercessors can be now mixed and matched within the same squad, and that squad can be led by either an Assault Intercessor Sergeant or regular Intercessor Sergeant. We also have technically 2 new operatives in the form of the Assault Intercessor Grenadier and the Intercessor Gunner. We'll get to those in a bit. First up of the truly new material is the expected bespoke faction tac ops. The first one, Shock and Awe, grants you victory points for controlling objective markers at the end of a turn if they started a turn being controlled by an enemy operative. Champion of Mankind may be revealed when one of your operatives incapacitates an enemy. If by the end of the battle that operative has scored more kills than any of your other operatives, you gain a victory point. You also gain another victory point if they have killed more enemy operatives than each other enemy operative has during the battle. I suspect this might be a good one to take against a horde team. It's interesting to note you don't have to reveal this with the first operative you incapacitate, meaning you can wait until you're sure that one of your intercessors is going to get more kills than the rest of the squad. Finally, we have Indomitable Superiority, which rewards you for dominating the opposition. If, at the end of the battle, you control objective markers but your opponent does not, you gain a victory point. You also gain an additional victory point if, by the end of the game, there are less enemy operatives in the kill zone than friendly ones. As nice as these tac ops are, reading new tac ops for a new kill team isn't the most interesting thing in the world, but that all changes on the next page because chapter tactics are back. Interestingly, they don't name specific chapters, but instead list 12 different abilities split across 4 categories. You get to pick 2 of them to best represent your kill team. I'm sure both tournament and narrative players will salivate over this. Tournament players can try and pick the most powerful combination, while narrative players can take choices that best represent how they feel their chapter should play. You are also not restricted to picking from the same category for your choices. So, taking a look at the abilities, the first category is Martial Zealotry, which is your melee focus category. The first ability is called Aggressive, which means each time one of your operatives fights in combat in an activation in which it performed a charge action, its melee weapons gain the rending critical hit rule for that combat. Jeweler is one of my favourites. Each time an operative fights in combat, in the resolved successful hit steps of that combat, each time it parries with a critical hit, you can select an additional normal hit of your opponent's to be discarded. And then we have Rapid, which adds Triangle to your operative's movement characteristic. Next up is Tactical Evasion, which is a category I'm sure is going to be very popular with Raving players. The first ability is called Raider. This allows your operatives to perform the charge action while within engagement range of an enemy operative. In addition, whenever they perform a normal move action, they're allowed to get within engagement range of an enemy operative as long as they don't finish there. Stealthy is particularly interesting. Each time a shooting attack is made against this operative in the roll defense dice step of that shooting attack, before you roll your defense dice, if it's in cover and more than pentagon away from the active operative, you can do one of the following. You can either retain one additional dice as a successful normal save as a result of cover, or retain one dice as a successful critical save instead of a normal save as a result of cover. Finally, we have Mobile, which allows your operative to perform the fallback action for one less action point to a minimum of 1. Gene-wrought Resilience focuses on toughness and contains some very good choices. Unyielding adds 1 to your operative's wounds characteristic. Durable means critical hits inflict 1 less damage on operatives. And Hardy means that each time a shooting attack is made against an operative with Hardy, in the roll defense dice step of that shooting attack, retains defense dice results of 5+ are critical saves, instead of just 6. The final category, Discipline of Iron, is your shooting focus category. I'm sure there might be some good combos in here, but on an initial read through, this is probably, for me, the least interesting category due to the relatively mundane weapon options this kill team has access to. First up we have Accurate. Each time this operative makes a shooting attack with a bolt weapon in the roll attack dice step of that shooting attack, if you retain any critical hits, that weapon gains the no cover special rule for that shooting attack. Next up we have Methodical, which I quite like. You can ignore any or all modifiers to the ballistic skill and weapon skill characteristics of your operative's weapons. This will be very useful if you happen to go up against Horde style teams a lot and are anticipating having lots of Overwatch attacks. Finally we have Deadly Sharpshooter, which despite the cool sounding name I feel is probably the least good of all of the abilities that you can take. What this does is effectively, for an operative's bolt weapons, you reduce your damage characteristic for your critical hits by 1, but you gain the Mortal Wound 1 critical hit rule instead. There is a very niche use for this, but considering you only get to take 2 of these abilities and there are many other better ones, I don't see this one being taken too often. Overall, I like these chapter abilities a lot. I'm very tempted to expand my love for Black Power armor to making a kill team representing Black Templar Sword Brethren, taking selections from the Martial Zealotry and Gene-wrought Resilience categories. So let's take a look at the strategic and tactical ploys. Starting with strategic ploys, we have 3 very similar ones to begin with. Devastator Doctrine allows you to reroll 1 attack if shooting at a target more than pentagon away from you. Tactical Doctrine allows you to gain that single reroll if shooting at a target within pentagon of you. And Assault Doctrine gives you that single reroll in combat during an activation in which you charge. Rounding out the strategic ploys, we have the ever useful And They Shall Know No Fear, which allows you to ignore modifiers to your operative's APL as well as ignoring any injuries. You might notice that Shock Assault and Bolted Discipline are conspicuously absent. Well, fear not, we'll get to that. For our tactical ploys, we start off with Adaptive Tactics, which I see being used a fair bit in tournament play. This allows you, before the start of the game during the Select a Kill Team step, to change out one of your chapter tactics for another one from within the same category. Naturally, you can only use this once per battle. We have Transhuman Physiology. This is always useful. It allows you to retain one of your successful normal saves as a critical save. We have Angel of Death, which allows one of your operatives to perform a free fight action at the end of the firefight phase. And finally, we have Wrath of Vengeance. When one of your intercessors is incapacitated before you take them off from the kill zone, you can perform a free shoot action with them. Unless otherwise specified, that operative does count as injured, however. Now, let's move on to the datasheets. These remain largely unchanged except for 2 very important differences. The first one is each operative now has an additional wound over their compendium counterparts, which is always welcome, but more impressively, look at the abilities on the data cards. Assault Intercessors now have Shock Assault as a natural, inbuilt ability rather than a strategic ploy, and regular intercessors now have bolter discipline as a default ability. This frees up a lot of command points to be spent on things and is very powerful, and definitely helps bring Space Marines up to where they need to be. The rest of the data sheets remain largely the same as in the compendium, so we can move on. Taking a look at the two new operative types, first we have the Assault Intercessor Grenadier. If you're taking at least one Assault Intercessor, this operative is pretty much an auto take. He's exactly the same as a normal Assault Intercessor, but is also equipped with a frag and crack grenade for free. Simple, brutal, and to the point. I like it. Now the next operative, the Intercessor Gunner, is one that I'm simultaneously a little bit disappointed by and also really excited for. Disappointed because I would have liked to have seen the soup nature of this kill team expanded on and have the Gunner as a heavy intercessor instead. But I'm also really excited for it because this operative, whilst technically new, is actually a much more improved version of what you can field from the compendium. The Gunner is essentially a regular intercessor with an auxiliary grenade launcher, but unlike the compendium selection of Intercessor Warrior with auxiliary grenade launcher bought from the equipment list, this operative has the grenade launcher for free, and best of all, isn't limited in its ammunition. You can fire frag and crack grenades to your heart's content, while also firing the auto bolt rifle in the same activation due to bolter discipline. This is pretty amazing at first glance, and I suspect will be an auto include for most teams. This looks like it's shaping up to be a great team, so let's take a look at the equipment selection. Frag and crack grenades and the Purity Seal all make their return from the compendium. So does the Auspex, but it is now much better. It costs 1 equipment point less, works to a longer range, pentagon instead of square, and infinite range if the enemy operative is visible. It only costs a single action point to use instead of 2, and it makes it so that the enemy model cannot count as obscured, in addition to removing the ability to retain defense dice as a result of cover. Just a huge improvement all round. Brand new to the team, we have the Vengeance class scope. Costing 3 equipment points, and it allows an operative with either a bolt rifle or stalker bolt rifle to gain the lethal 5+ rule. We also have Reclusium Blessed bolts. You can only take this once and it costs 3 equipment points, but this allows an operative to add 1 to both damage characteristics of a bolt weapon they are equipped with. If you want to put all your eggs in one basket, this will make the Intercessor Gunner extra disgusting, as you'll potentially be able to attack your opponents with 2 weapons that both deal 4-5 damage each activation, but I'd be tempted to put this on a regular Intercessor Warrior with an auto bolt rifle so that you have almost like a heavy bolter light to back up your gunner. Finally, we have the Tilting Shield. I like the flavour of this. It effectively removes your opponent's ability to score criticals on anything but a 6 in combat, which is very useful for negating operatives with lethal 5+ or rending such as Custodies or Genestealers. It does however cost 3 equipment points. Whilst it's a pretty powerful piece of equipment, I think it's a bit pricey for something which ultimately is situational. We'll have to see how it bears out in play. The rest of the document goes over additional rules for using your Intercessor kill teams in narrative Spec Ops play. I won't spoil these here, and I'll leave them for you guys to read at your leisure, but it's safe to say they look fun, and that without doubt, inclusive of the Phobos release, Space Marines have finally truly come to kill team. My mind is already flooding with different ideas for this faction. So there we have it. Drop a like if you enjoyed the video and hit subscribe if you want to see more, and let me know what you think in the comments. Are you happy with these new rules? Do they inspire you to start yet another new kill team? I'm definitely feeling the potential of a dueling focused Black Templar team, but I can't deny that some of the shooting options look great. I'll see you in the next video.